to the brink of almost absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Now, when entire industries are at stake here, then it's incumbent on all the other industries to band around this part of the community, because we are all impacted. If a single industry is collapsed, we as an entire business community are all affected.
Yep. Hi everybody, and welcome to a brand new podcast. This podcast is hosted by myself, Christine Mudvanhu, on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce, the United Chamber. This podcast is a place where we're looking to have some conversations, and is really the genesis and the brainchild of David Burkett and myself, having conversations around how we can amplify certain voices. So we've got David here today to really talk about what is it that we're trying to achieve in this space, what are the conversations we're hoping to have, what is the content that we will be curating over time. So David, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Good, very good. Very excited at the potential of just reaching out to, wider and wider audiences and engaging. So this is the right time for us to get out there.
So tell me a little bit about your history with the Chamber of Commerce. How did you come to be president?
Well, I was actually invited by a friend of mine who told me about a particular chamber that needed some help in the area of events, and we were able to curate some industry events, and those events were quite successful, and we started developing some great relationships with some incredible companies. So Flight Centre was one of them, but we also worked with KPMG, and we worked with Clayton Utes, and we worked with News Corp, and we worked with Audi and the Intrapilli Golf Club, and just this incredible, community-centric organizations that were very interested in feeding back into the business community and getting engaged. And we gave them an avenue and a mechanism to do that, and helping them to amplify their own voice in the same time. But then there was also a undercurrent of businesses that were looking to engage these businesses, these larger corporations. And we were providing a platform for businesses to do that, to engage effectively. And what we had seen prior to that is that networking events were very difficult to get a networking outcome from, because you're being introduced into rooms that weren't conducive of doing business with the right people that you wanted to contact.
Okay, excellent. So what have been, how long have you been president of the Chamber?
So the president part was last year, but I was vice president going back a few years ago. And ever since I stepped into the Chamber of Commerce, I was always looking to kind of work with other chambers of commerces and bring, the message that we are better off together, that, united we can do a lot more for our business communities. And so we worked in with a number of different chambers, and I was driving a uniting initiative going back approximately 5 years ago. Excellent.
So what are some of the changes, I guess, that people can expect from your tenure as president? What are some of the things that I guess you have seen working that you want to continue, but what are the new and different ideas that you're bringing into this space?
Well, the first thing that we did when we kind of took to the helm is we started thinking about the Chamber of Commerce, what it was, what it is, and what it could and should be. And part of that process has been a process of rediscovery and a process of understanding ourselves, understanding what the marketplace is and what our niche is and how we can serve them. And so we went on a fact-finding mission, and a big help to that process was the initial team that started getting around, let's say, the idea that we could actually serve in a really impactful way. So Ian McFarlane and some others started kind of jumping on board, and we went through this process of just reinvention. And it felt like we were pulling pieces out of an old motor, and in the end, we were left with the pieces that were really effective for us to move forward in a manner that was going to get the outcome.
Yeah.
So we focused in on a very micro level with one person, started developing out what a value proposition could and should be for us. And we were testing and teasing every step along the way. And what we arrived at is a membership model that not only is a membership, is a way to engage, but it's also engaging. And what we discovered that is that it's not enough to engage, you have to be engaging.
Yes.
It has to lead to the next step.
Excellent.
So that was one of the big discoveries. Another big discovery is that we couldn't serve all people, we couldn't be all things to all people.
Yeah.
So there were certain things that we had to begin to outsource. And really that is the nature of business, is that we specialize in a particular area and people can come to you for, let's say, diversity and inclusion consulting, and then leave, let's say, for example, personal branding up to the experts. And then when we have a personal branding issue, then we go to that particular person. And I really like the mentality of soldiers in a tactical warfare. The person who's leading the charge is always the person who has the skill for the situation.
Okay.
Right? So the leadership continually changes based on whatever the circumstance is. Right? And if right now the circumstance is we got to do some marketing, then that's the person who's the leader right now. Everyone's listening to that particular captain. And so we were not hierarchical by nature. We understood, some fundamental things about community and about driving that particular outcome. And we understood about what we wanted to bring not only to our niche market, but also to the wider Chamber of Commerce community. And that's the part that really excited us, is that we could do something here that wasn't, let's puff up our chest and say, we're doing unity because of the office of Chamber of Commerce. But instead, there's a way that we can serve the entire community that adds a lot of value that's undeniable, and through this mechanism we can come together.
Excellent. Now, small business has obviously taken a hiding over the last few years. I mean, we've seen the impacts of COVID, the global pandemic, and that's not unique to Australia, but how it's felt globally is different in each space. We've also seen more recently the increasing price of fuel, the impacts that's having on small business, and even more recent and closer to home, the impact of floods and other, climate changing events, and which Australia is not immune to. But with the flood more recently, there have been more businesses that, again, have gone under. And if you look at the history and the trajectory of flooding in Queensland in the last even 10 years, there's some small businesses that have been impacted on several occasions. So in your strategy as president of the Chamber and bringing in new and innovative ideas, how are you looking at that resilience factor? Because there is an element of fatigue for small business in that space of having to restart again and redo this and reinvent, that's been caused by circumstances that are not really of their own making.
I think what we speak into is not so much the resilience side. I think the part that we are able to speak into is the side that these things, change is a constant.
Yeah.
And
so true.
And disruption is a constant as well. So no matter how successful and trendy you are today, there'll always be a new kid in town that is wanting to eat your lunch, right? And so the nature of business is very disruptive by nature because of it's built into a competitive environment. So competition alone represents, let's say, a mechanism of disruption, and that's okay, because we get paid to be centered enough and to be planned enough to provide a service even in moments of chaos. So I think there is an incredible opportunity to prove that we deserve to be where we're at, even under immense pressure. And I think even that immense pressure is what proves that we are the right business for the task, because like the Forrest Gump boat that was the last ship standing, it was able to reap the benefits, let's say, of playing the long game and fighting the storm.
Yeah.
And so I think we're going to come into, this is not the last of it. We've been through fires, floods. I mean, the only thing missing now is earthquake. You know? I think we've pretty much expressed
Melbourne
everything.
had that.
Melbourne had it, yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there's been some tremors, but we're pretty much being hit by everything you can possibly imagine. And what that's going to naturally do is build a resilience.
Yeah.
And so you can plan for risk and mitigate risk, but in terms of resilience that's built up, that's based on your psychology to the way life is dealing your cards, so to speak. And we need to have a very positive and optimistic mindset and viewpoint so that we can take even our own community on a journey that is very hopeful, because we have so much to look forward to in the future regarding business and opportunities. But at the same time, we cannot afford for entire industries like the events industry,
Yes.
which is pummeled
Yes.
during COVID to the brink of almost absolute disaster.
Yeah.
Now, when entire industries are at stake here, it's incumbent on all the other industries to band around this part of the community, because we're all impacted. If a single industry is collapsed, we as an entire business community are all affected.
Yep. But what are some of the things, just coming back to your point about industry, rallying around an industry that's almost in annihilation? And I want to talk about face-to-face events, because I think the whole virtual space is reinventing itself into a new marketplace. But if you're looking at your traditional face-to-face, like your massive conferences, right, your corporate team building days, your social events, your markets, your community events, if we're looking your birthdays, your big parties, if we're looking at that event space, because that's been decimated,
Yes.
how can other industries come in and put some supports or help with resurrecting that as an industry?
I think we definitely need to come together and plan for these events based on the events that we're currently going through.
Yeah.
Is plan for it. Use the events industry as an example of how an entire industry can absolutely implode under the pressure of something like a pandemic. And this is not the first or the last pandemic, and this is not the first or the last disaster.
Yep.
Natural or unnatural disaster. But from a industry perspective, one thing that we're looking at bringing as a thought leadership piece is the notion that industry and commerce, when capitalism rose to the dizzying heights of influence that it did through the Western world, what it did is it also created mechanisms, and I really appreciate the quality of life, and I'm an entrepreneur myself, a serial entrepreneur, so I appreciate the opportunities, and democracy is really a fundamental key element of that. But there's also some fundamental flaws and some systemic issues that need to be addressed. And one of them is that business is allowed to act and operate outside of the accountability of community. In the past, whenever there was an opportunity for a business, it was always birthed inside of a community with the blessing of a community.
Okay.
It wasn't the blessing of a legal act in a document somewhere in some office. It was always, I want to do this, and the community got it. And you know that quote of, it takes an entire tribe to raise a child, right?
Yes.
Well, to keep businesses protected and people going off and adding these levels of value, the community was always consulted as having a seat at the table.
Okay.
Right? And so when we got to those dizzying heights of, let's say, capitalism, it no longer mattered whether you went to work in the morning and displaced villages and then came home for dinner like as if nothing happened. You could actually do that as long as it wasn't illegal. right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't go to jail, right? But there's a conscious thing that everything that we do has a reaction, and we are symbiotic by nature, and we're connected to the entire environment. So if we can begin to understand the value of community and what it is fundamentally, and how it can help protect the environment, society, as well as entire industries, then having a community with a seat at the table becomes an imperative when we plan for the future.
That's amazing. I really like the accountability of community and really noted that. And I think there's been, I guess, with the whole global pandemic, there has been that feeling, particularly with events and hospitality, that there's no lack of accountability for them having a seat at the table when decisions that are really decimating their industry are being made. And I think a lot of the conversations we heard, particularly coming out of that industry, because those were the ones that were hardest hit, and really looking at those industries that really need that wrapping, that really need, I guess, that reinforcement and that support. What is the chamber rolling out in way of products and services? I know you've talked about how you've come in with a different vision and some different ideas.
Yeah.
How are you generating that value proposition, and how does that look different from what your predecessor left?
So this is probably in two parts. One from, let's say, the Chamber of Commerce community.
Yeah.
And in this state, Queensland, we have a governing body called CCIQ. And they, like myself, have gone throughout the entire state and had conversations with people in Rockhampton, in Gladstone, and all of these communities, all the way up to the tippy top, Cape Tribulation, is they all have their own unique set of challenges, their own unique set of opportunities, and ways of capitalizing on those opportunities. And so I think that it has to start with a conversation, and that conversation leads to a plethora of products and services that are unique to the regions.
Okay.
And unique to us as a state, because we can have conversations about us as a city, us as Southeast Queensland, which is a big conversation now that Olympic Games has been announced as mainly a Southeast Queensland thing, with a little bit of regional connectivity. But the North Queensland, South Queensland thing has been a conversation for a very long time. And the North Queensland has felt very disconnected from the things that are happening down here, and feel like they've kind of gotten the poor end of the stick in terms of leveraged support. And so one thing the Chamber can do is advocacy, and they're really, really big on advocacy. And CCIQ do some brilliant work in that space. The other thing is that it can lean on a community, an entire community of specialist business people, mentors, people to actually help you in times of difficulty. But then also, as a growing community, this is something that we're starting to implement, is through technology and through some other mechanisms, is help to be a part of even the growth of growing organizations, and add a lot of value in terms of marketing and business development and sales. And so the Chamber of Commerce, even though it does provide a very sparse and a wide range of services, I think it has to be unique to your business. And if you're not getting value from it, you have to question it. You have to put it up to a referendum. But the thing that we focused on with our chamber, and what we're pushing to all the presidents, is that you have to start with your unique selling proposition, just like a normal business. You have to start with who your niche is and how you're going to communicate to them, and then how you're going to add that value and then add fuel to that particular fire. And we are creating resources and mechanisms to help all chambers of commerces kind of go through this process. So part of it has been that we're inviting other chambers of commerces, other member organizations, to be a part of our own reinvention story,
Yeah.
so they can no longer fear the idea of what is ahead, even though we are in some areas starting from scratch.
In terms of membership base and attracting different businesses that are coming through, so the chamber has particular demographics that
Correct.
usually lend themselves towards that space. So your accountants, your mortgage brokers, your insurance brokers, and things like that, you find are in mainstream membership of chambers. But there's a whole plethora now of small businesses, right?
Yeah.
Everybody, what COVID has brought out is the entrepreneurial gene in all of us, because we've all had to reinvent ourselves and think, well, my 9 to 5 might not exist, so what do I need to do? What do I need to do differently? How are you bringing a lot of those, or how are you thinking of reaching out to a lot of those side hustlers who really, because everybody now has got a side hustle, and I know the Great Resignation is not really a thing in Australia as it is in the US, but there are pockets of it, where people have, said, hey, look, enough is enough, and e-commerce has really broken the barriers around, access to markets for products and services. I mean, you can literally within an hour set up a business and be trading. If you literally think about it, just go on Shopify, set up a Shopify store, set up your email address, look up a few products, start selling. I know there's a lot of complexities that go in behind thought processes, but literally that's how some people are starting, and if that doesn't work, you close up and you try something else. The cost of entry is so much lower. But there's a lot of value in that side hustle entrepreneurship community. But I don't feel they're necessarily the staple of the membership of Chambers of Commerce. How are you thinking of reaching out to that side hustle community?
I think it's a really, really great question, because it's probably one of those things that we don't really talk about much, especially from a corporate standpoint. Corporations don't know how to even start the conversation with some of the influencers inside of their own community. And these people can have a lot of influence to help the businesses that they work for actually grow and move forward and advance the needle. But the corporations themselves don't know how to leverage that influence that each one of their employees has. Because from an extended reach perspective, 1,000 employees could mean indirect millions and millions of audience that you have, direct access to.
Yeah.
And so there's just from being alive and breathing and having family and having a network and being part of different groups outside of workplace puts you in a position of leverage, especially if you start investing into your personal brand. So one thing that we've started to do is we've started to develop future of work events, seminars, and workshops to help even not just workers, but then even researchers and people out of universities who are looking to get their research papers out there in a powerful way, to access the services that they need in order to lift up their profile. Now, big brands are starting to take note. And the evidence of what I'm talking about is not just in these 8-year-old kids who are making $12 million a year on YouTube, but it's the 100.
Do they need to be adopted?
Well, they need to speak at our conference.
Yeah.
They need to speak at our conference to educate me and my family on what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
But so, I'm more than happy. I'll be the first one to put my hand up to learn from these 8, 9, and 10-year-olds.
Yeah.
But even people like Joe Rogan, $100 million for a podcast. And who would have thought that, little podcast could be that big, could be that big. So that is one deal. Joe Rogan doesn't have to stop there.
Yeah.
That could be just another starting point.
Yeah.
Right? And I mean, Joe Rogan is very interesting, and I love his approach. But he's not the most interesting person on earth.
Yeah.
But he's the one with the $100 million podcast.
Yeah, because he's the one who's probably been out there and done something.
And so side hustles are really powerful. We want to help people with that. It is the future of work. is much more related to your investment into personal brand and how you grow communities and how you're a part of those communities. And we are designing these products and services. All of our events now take into consideration the side hustle is now potentially the main hustle.
The main hustle. I like that. The side hustle is now potentially the main hustle. Now, you mentioned the conference. Can you tell us a bit about what that's about? What's the conference about?
Okay, so part and parcel of what we do is events, workshops, seminars, all powered by a community of influencers that we've surrounded ourselves with. And we'll be interviewing them through this podcast and getting to know some of that community. People who operate in what people think are the fringes, but is becoming mainstream, such as blockchain, cryptocurrency, some of the things in technology and the metaverse. And we've even had conversations today about that. But I think where we're leading towards in terms of conferences is how do we bring all of that together. And one of the big banners that we're working towards is ESG and the ESG commitments. So that's environment, social, and governance. And really that's to kind of tuck everything into one tight-knit little space where we can help organizations to keep to their commitments, but also smash those commitments out of the water. What we realized is that there's an opportunity here to not only tick boxes. I think that has been, let's say, anti-community, because we've seen greenwashing in the environment, meaning environmental.
Oh, yes.
We've seen a lot of greenwashing. And then you could attest to this, is that we've seen organizations put up commercials of different parts of our community on their videos, their promotional videos.
Yeah.
But the reality is far from what's happening in those boardrooms.
Yeah.
There isn't systemic change, and they think they can just put up ads and then sort of get away with it. So we want to bring a very genuine and sincere approach to ensuring that companies don't look at the ESG commitments as a chore, but as a great opportunity to catalyze something that should have been done a very long time ago, which is in full integration into community and the ramifications of their business into community.
Yeah, excellent. And I think some of the conversations certainly that we are looking at bringing into this space are really to center around those environmental, social, and governance goals.
Yep.
But a lot of that conversation happens in the context of big business.
Yes.
And I guess there's a lot of focus because if you're looking at systemic change, but in Australia, 90-odd% of businesses are small businesses. 90-odd% of businesses, that are trading in some capacity have the remit to be in scope of being members of chambers of commerces all around. So, which is the audience that we're predominantly talking to. So in the format of these podcasts moving forward, I think one of the things we had talked about was really having a formulaic approach to the week. So we'll be having conversations throughout the week at different aspects, just setting, it's a real powwow meeting, setting up the tone for the week and what's ahead. We are looking at having a guest on here, and that guest can be an influencer from the chamber spaces. We really are inviting people from the broader audience. If you want to be here and tell your story, we really want to hear from members of chambers of commerces. How are you doing business? What resilience, what things have you learned, what pearls of wisdom can you share in this environment? So this is really an open invitation to anybody in the community who really wants to tell their stories, and details of how you can do that will be on the website, and there will be a form for you to fill in, and you can really send us your details and express your interest about being a special guest on that. We are going to be talking all things around money. So we're going to really be talking about wealth, and wealth in its broadest sense. And as you know, the topic of money is so exceptionally broad, and it is huge. We're really going to be diving in, bringing experts into that space, bringing in stockbrokers to anchor those those conversations, bringing investors in the startup community. A lot of businesses in this space are startups, so bringing on investors here, what is it that they're looking for in a startup? How do you even get into the investor community? Looking at how do you pitch, what are investors looking for, how do you even raise capital? We can talk about crowdfunding in this space again, as a source of funding, different funding models, even conversations around grants, because we know that our community, that is a source of funding again for there. We will be introducing different subject matters in that space, who we will use to anchor those conversations from time to time. We want to talk about all things marketing. And communication. And as great as your business is, and as fantastic as your business is, if nobody knows anything about it, it goes nowhere. So there's a lot of great, brilliant ideas and businesses out there that are struggling with marketing and what that marketing message looks like. So we really want to bring people, David mentioned earlier about personal branding. We want to bring people who are digital marketers. We want to bring people who are traditional marketers, people who know how to communicate, people who know how to create different vehicles or different strategies for you building your profile and really getting your product out there. We know historically and from surveys and conversations with our members that marketing is an area where businesses either make it or break it. It's not necessarily the business with the best product that makes it, it's the business with the best marketing that makes it. Because if people do not know your product and if people do not resonate with your message, people are not going to go out and buy. And then, so again, we'll have different experts in that space, anchoring that conversation and bringing you content that's of real value that you can apply to your business. So that is basically in a nutshell, the framework of how this podcast will be looking and over time. We are also very flexible in the format. We will change and grow given feedback. So we really want feedback. There'll be a feedback form. So please fill that in. We really take feedback really seriously. That's how we can learn and grow. What's resonating with you, what's not resonating with you, what's of value to you, what's of interest to you. More specifically, so that we can bring topics and speakers that are of interest to you and things that are really going to make a difference to you as a member of this community. So David, anything else you would like to say about the podcast and its vision?
No, I think that's a really good summation. If you do know someone or a business that could benefit from being part of what we're doing and how we're doing it, please reach out to us. And we're just looking forward to engaging more people and working towards a vision, something that's meaningful and impactful. And we, from the caliber and the quality of people that have surrounded us, even in this building that we're in right now, we're in the offices of agile experts who specialize in payroll and agile project management for business systems. We're very appreciative of that. But even from his perspective, there's a lot of value that he can bring, Brett, to the table. Brett Cohen here is the CEO, but we're calling out to more people and more businesses. And if you want to be a part of what we're doing, we'd love to reach out to you as well and sit down and really kind of work that thing through, because right now more than ever, we really need to kind of band together and work together for the greater good of everyone, and including future generations.
And none of these things happen without sponsorship. So I think one of our main sponsors are Agile experts who are really sponsoring their space. This is where the podcasts are being recorded. And so we really are looking at how we engage in that space. And if anybody's interested in providing that sponsorship piece, please again get in touch with us. We really are interested in amplifying your brand, because the greater the reach of the podcast is, also the greater your brand reach is. So from myself, Christine Mudvanhu, and from David, we look forward to spending more time with you as we grow. In closing, we would like to thank our sponsors.
Yes. So obviously, we've spoken about finances, and one of our key sponsors is Agile Experts, who helps companies to manage their payroll systems. And payroll touches all aspects of business, and so they've got some world-leading consultancy services out of this space, and so we encourage you to kind of reach out to them. Also got Elevator, which is we're actually interviewing Andre, and it's business automations and processes, and then so we want to thank them for coming on board with a podcast. And we also have CMS. Now CMS is a large production company out of Melbourne, who's now has clients like the Titans and the Brisbane Bullets, but has decided to come on a long journey with us year round in terms of production. And so you'll see them at all our networking events and just elevating the class and the quality and delivery of our events, which are already very exciting and are must-attend events. But besides that, we're just looking forward to reaching out to more people and widening that circle of influence.
Thank you, David. And not forgetting our sponsoring chamber.
Absolutely.
So big shout out to all of our family who work really hard behind the scenes to put everything together, and we'll be continuing to work hard behind the scenes to bring this content